If you are living a rich, fulfilled life, the money is going to come. The material things are going to come. It was the premiere.
It was the premiere.
We took ourselves very seriously, sir.
Okay.
Do not disrespect the Chocolate City premiere. It was one of the most painful moments in my career, to be honest with you, brother.
Yeah.
I had made this movie, Stomp the Yard, and the whole point of the movie was it was a love letter from me to fraternities and sororities. Money, value, hard work is the path to getting there, right? Yeah. First, see your own value, realize how that can turn into money, but also realize that the pathway to get there is always going to be the work, always going to be what you're willing to put in, and always going to be what you're willing to do that others are not doing.
Yeah.
Money don't grow on trees, but I still believe I can achieve. Cause cash rules everything around me, around me, around me, around me. Money don't grow on trees, but I still believe I can achieve. Cash rules everything around me, around me, around me, around me. Money don't grow on trees, but I still believe that I can achieve. Cause cash rules everything around me, around me, around me, around me.
Hey, this is Jerome D. Love, host of the Black Money Tree podcast, and I'm really excited. We have a special episode today. We are joined by one of Hollywood's most successful producers, over $1 billion in revenue. You may know him from Girls Trip or Think Like a Man, and he's a new author, and we're going to chop it up today to talk about how he built his success. So join me in welcoming the one, the only, Mr. Will Packer. Thank you so much for joining us on the Black Money Tree podcast.
You kidding me? I'm honored to be here, my friend. How you doing?
Man, I'm good. I'm just honored that you would join us.
Absolutely. Today. Well, I love the platform. I love the platform. I love what it represents. It's so important. And so for me to be in the position I'm in, I need to be a part of platforms like this. This is exactly what we need to be doing in terms of educating, letting people know, talking about equity, talking about literally black money, what we do in our community. So I'm eager to get into this conversation, brother.
Well, awesome. Well, we're so excited to have you. Now, success. Yeah. You're successful.
I'll accept that.
Okay. Yeah,
and the only reason I say that is because I'm very blessed. That's what I would say. But I have definitely, by any metric, have had some quantifiable success for sure.
Now, most people, when they define success, they define it monetarily. How much money you got. I want to be rich.
Right.
In fact, the Houston Chronicle did an article, and it was based upon a Charles Schwab survey. And the people that were surveyed said that it takes $2.3 million in order to be rich. So the first question, I want to know, do you agree with that? Is $2.3 million rich? And if not, how does Will Packer define rich?
Yeah, great question. I don't define it by monetary standards. That's the bottom line, right? If you are living a rich, fulfilled life, the money is going to come. The material things are going to come, right? I can't put a dollar amount on it because it depends on your lifestyle. What's important to you? What do you want to do? 2.3 is a whole lot of money to somebody that lives a very, very simplistic lifestyle. It's not a lot of money to somebody who lives an extravagant lifestyle. What is making you happy? What is driving you? I've been blessed to have a lot of material things. But what really makes me rich is the fact that I feel like I live a full life, man. I got a great family. I have great people around me with good energy. That's what I think you have to do. Pour into yourself, right? And the money will come. That's not to say, especially when I'm talking to black folks, it's not to say that we should not prioritize having resources, right? Not that we shouldn't prioritize wealth, especially community wealth. It's very, very important. It opens the doors, gives access and opportunity. But I always think the starting point is with our individual lives, living a full life. When people say, am I rich? I say I'm rich in spirit, I'm rich in family, I'm rich in friends. And then that's what has lent itself to me also having materialistic success.
Yeah. So just to be clear, is Will Packer rich?
Will Packer's rich.
Will Packer is rich.
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to rewind the hands of time. 1994.
Uh-oh. Okay.
You produce your first film.
Yes.
And you talk about it in the book. Now, I was intrigued by the entire story, but I'm a businessman, so I was intrigued by the fact that you had $20,000. The film cost $20,000. So I want to know, where did you get $20,000 in 1994 to produce a film?
That's a good question. See, people don't ask that, right? So the budget of our first film was called Chocolate City when I was just a sophomore at Florida A&M University, and the budget was $20,000. Here's the truth. we never actually had $20,000 in cash at any one time. That budget was a combination of actual money, of which we had about $8,000. That was all we could raise at that time. And that $8,000 came from grants and donation from student organizations at Florida A&M University. We got some from the Panhellenic Council. We got some from the Student Government Association. The other was in-kind services and barter agreements. So we did have resources amounting to $20,000. And this is the thing people got to realize. They hear numbers thrown around all the time, you know, billion here, million there. Sometimes those numbers are the accumulation of the amount of resources that you have access to. So we went in and we borrowed film equipment that was donated to us by a local television studio, right? We went in and got free editing time from another local television studio. We would have to go in the middle of the night when they weren't shooting. So they would shoot their news broadcast during the day, and then the editing bays were open from like 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. So we'd have to go in the middle of the night. They charged us for that time, but then wrote it off as a barter agreement because we then agreed to go back and intern and work with them. And so we got that in-kind service is what it's called. So $20,000 was what we had total. We never actually raised that much money. I didn't have anybody rich, man. That was a lot of money.
No,
we got about $8,000. That's the real number.
So $8,000 cash was out of pocket, and that was grants and from other people. No, that's right. That's good, and a lot of people don't talk about that. And I told you, I run Black Expo.
Yeah.
A lot of the first years, we did a lot of bartering. You would see us with billboards. You would see us with radio ads, television ads. People didn't know. We were getting those donated. Hey, I give you a booth if you run those ads for me. And that was the way we, made it happen.
Yeah.
So you talk about in the book, at the premiere, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
The auditorium was packed.
Not we would call it. It was the premiere.
It was the premiere.
We took ourselves very seriously, sir.
Okay.
Do not disrespect the Chocolate City premiere. That was the world black tie premiere of Chocolate City in Tallahassee, Florida, in Lee Hall Auditorium.
Yeah.
We were very audacious.
Yeah. You talked about how you had the whole front row reserved for Oprah Winfrey and I don't remember Tyler Perry and all the Hollywood elites, and you actually invited them.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, like I started my first business, as I told you, when I was in college. It was a clothing line called Goo Gog's Hip Hop Apparel.
Okay.
And people started wearing my clothes. And then people would say, oh, you got your Goo Gogs? And the Bruhs would buy them in black and gold, and the AKAs wanted them in pink. And it was amazing to me to see how an idea that came out of my mind, now others were placing value on it, and they were clamoring for it.
Okay.
So walk me through the emotions you felt. How'd you feel when you came up with that idea? Walk into that auditorium.
Yes.
It was packed.
Yes.
Even though you said it wasn't necessarily the best film, but people were rallying around it. Talk about that.
People love seeing themselves on film. And you're hitting on something that's important that I think people watching now can identify with. The realization of a dream. Just like with your clothing line, just like with my first movie, I invited all these fancy Hollywood folks. None of them showed up. But the students showed up. And we did have a black tie premiere. We made everybody go out and rent formal wear. That was the only way you could get in because we wanted to be fancy.
Yeah.
But they did it because it was important to them. Standing on that stage getting ready to introduce my movie, Hollywood couldn't care less about it. I couldn't get a return call from anybody that I thought was so important. But what I had to realize was that the important people were the ones that actually came up and showed up for me, the ones that showed up for you when you had your clothing line. Somebody is watching this that's trying to start a business and they're trying to figure out how to get to some big financer or big distributor. But who is in your current support system? They're actually helping you to realize your dream, even if it's on a small level. So that's where my first movie started, right there, Chocolate City. It was incredible to sit there seeing those students see themselves on film. Nobody famous was in it. Nobody knew anybody, right? I can't tell you, so-and-so big actor was in my first movie. No, these were all just students, frat brothers, and classmates that came out and were in the movie. None of them went on to become famous, but it was a big deal at that time for that audience, and we treated it like it was a big deal. That was the first realization of my dream.
Yeah. So this is the Black Money Tree. We talk about business. We talk about money.
Yes.
I want to understand the movie business.
Okay.
So your second movie, I believe, was
Twa, yes.
75,000.
That was
So
our budget, yep.
I'm a real estate guy.
Okay.
So I find land, I determine what I'm going to do with it, put houses, mixed use, whatever. I can come up with a budget. It's going to cost $50 million. It'll be worth $100. I can calculate the return. I go to the bank say I'll give you 70%. Then I got to go to my LPs and raise the rest of the money.
Yes.
How does it work in the movie world?
Yeah.
To me, the movie idea is the real estate.
Okay.
But it's kind of nebulous. It's not like tangible land. You can't project, you don't know what the return is. So walk me through that process. You have an idea, you need to raise some money. How does it work? How do you calculate the returns? How does that work?
Yeah, okay, so I would say it's not apples to apples in terms of movies and real estate where the idea would be the land. What I would say the closest analogy would be that the actual screenplay or IP, that's the land, right? Okay. That is where you're going to derive your value. But to step away from the real estate analogy, think of a film as any other business endeavor where you have to have certain elements that you then are going to monetize and then exploit, i.e. sell, right? So let's say you and I come up with a great movie idea. Awesome, we got a great idea, but a lot of people got ideas. And I tell people that all the time. An idea means nothing. An idea is like having the right shoes at the beginning of a marathon. You ain't done nothing till you run 26 miles, right? Yeah. So we got a great idea. Now we have to turn that idea into something that's tangible. The most common way to do that is to take that idea and turn it into a screenplay. So you and I have an idea, we then go out and find a writer. We will either pay that writer or that writer will go and do it for free, which is sometimes called on spec. They give us a screenplay. Now we have something tangible that we can sell. But that still does not have a value yet until you attach other elements to it, right? So we got a screenplay. Typically you go into Hollywood or you want to go to a financier, they want to say, okay, great, this is a good script. Who's in it? Who's directing it? Is there distribution? Those are the elements that start to give it value. So we got a great screenplay. Now we go out and we say, okay, we're going to attach Idris Elba, all right? He's going to be our actor, and then we're going to go out and we're going to attach Martin Scorsese. So now we got a great director, and now we got a great actor and this screenplay. That package has a value that will be assigned by the movie market, because we can go out and we can say, Sony, what will you give us? Paramount, what will you give us? Universal, and you leverage everybody, and now you can sell that package. That is typically the job of a producer. My job is to package things, put the elements together that give it value, then I monetize it. I will cut a deal with a financier, right? Typically, they will give me an upfront amount of money for that package, right? I have to still pay Martin Scorsese and Idris Elba and whatever my writer deal was. Then the movie comes out, be it theatrical, streaming, whatever the distribution method is. I get money back. I get my what's called upfront compensation and contingent compensation. Usually that package has a certain value. Let's just call that X, right? Then contingent compensation is Y, and that is typically derived from the profits minus X, minus whatever you got up front. Then whatever is left over, there's a calculation, usually a percentage of the back end profits. With streaming, oftentimes you don't get back end. A lot of people don't understand that. With theatrical, you have a movie, it comes out, it makes $100 million at the box office. You usually can either get a piece of that box office, or you can get what's called box office bonuses that are calculated based on certain thresholds that you'll hit. At 50 million, get this. At 60 million, get that. With streaming, usually they say, we're not going to give you anything on the back end. We're going to give it all to you up front. We're not going to give you as much as you would have made if it was a big theatrical hit, but we will give you a percentage over what we would have paid you if we were giving you back in. In other words, if you sell that movie and they're going to give you $20 million up front, right? With streaming, they'll say, we'll give you $30 million, but that's it. Don't matter if the movie is a hit or if it flops. You get your 30, you walk away. In the box office scenario with theatrical, you get your 20, and then you might make another 20 and another 20 on that if it's a big success.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you grew up in St. Petersburg, Florida. Your parents were very involved in your life. They told you a lot about what you could do, not necessarily what you couldn't do.
You're right.
So I want to know, what did they teach you about money, wealth, finance, and what are some of the principles that you're still using today?
Yeah, good question. And it's so important because that's the foundation for me. And many of us, unfortunately, don't grow up with that foundation. In order to start a positive cycle of wealth in our community, you have to do it through the lens of kids, right? So my parents, number one, always made me feel like I was valuable, right? You have to understand your intrinsic value in order to be able to get other people to assign value to you. And so my parents were very clear that you are valuable and you can do anything. They never talked about what you can't do. They told me you can do anything you're willing to work hard enough to do, right? Yeah. And so that then, understanding my own value, when I thought about money, my parents, we grew up middle class. I had my mom primarily worked in the home, and my dad was the breadwinner. He was an electrical engineer. They were very, I won't say strict, but they were conservative in the way that they gave me money, right? I did have an allowance, but it wasn't much. If I wanted to go out and get something that I didn't need, something that I wanted, I had to work for it. And so I assigned the value of money and getting things that I want, not what I need, with having to work for them. That was important. I still have that same value today.
Yeah. So a lot of times in your book, you say things like, in the Packer household, there's a saying, and so I want to know, like my daughter, I told you about our 20-year celebration of Black Expo. My daughter actually introduced me, and she told the whole crowd how when she was growing up, I had her tearing out sheetrock, laying floors, and
you put her to work.
Yeah, I put her to work.
Okay,
but she also talked about how she was then the president of the freshman business school at Howard University, and how that was the foundation.
Paid off.
What does that look like in the Packer household? Can you take your kids on set? Are they in business meetings, or how do you instill those same values in your children?
We have a mantra in the Packer household, and it is, if you want to have what others don't, you have to be willing to do what others won't. Yeah. That is our mantra. Yeah. And literally, we talk about that, and I say, if you want what others don't have, you got to be willing to do what others aren't doing. Right? You want to have what everybody else has, just do what everybody else is doing. If you want something special and something specific, you got to be willing to do more. I've absolutely brought my kids on set. I've been careful about it because I don't want to push them too much into entertainment. Entertainment's a field that, attracts a lot of people. A lot of people think they want to be in entertainment until they really realize how hard it is and what it takes. Yeah. And so I've never pushed them into entertainment. We'll see. I don't know yet. My kids are, they're older now. My youngest is a junior in college. My oldest has been out of college now for about 5 years. And so they still may end up in entertainment. They're all very successful in their own right. But what I tried to instill with them was the same thing my parents instilled with me, which is money, value, hard work is the path to getting there, right? Yeah. First, see your own value, realize how that can turn into money, but also realize that the pathway to get there is always going to be the work. Always going to be what you're willing to put in, and always going to be what you're willing to do that others are not doing.
Yeah. Now, you tell a story in the book. It was a powerful story of you overheard your son talking to one of his friends about their most painful moment. Yeah. And your son said his most painful moment was when he was recovering from surgery and his grandmother had to try to, I believe, put him on the toilet.
Yeah.
And it struck a chord with you because you didn't even remember it because you were off doing what Will Packer does.
That's right. Okay. That's right.
So 2 questions with that. You said it didn't really seem to have mattered to your son. Your son didn't seem to affect him, but it more affected you.
It did.
One, if you could rewind the hands of time, would you do anything different? Clearly, you're at a level of success. You can do and provide a lot for them because of those sacrifices, but would you do anything differently? Yeah. And then, secondly, I want to know, did you and your son ever have a conversation about that? Yeah. And what was that like?
Yeah, we did. So the story is that he was a football player in high school and he had to get a surgery, and during the recovery process, he remembers how awful it was, and he said his grandmother was there with him and had to take him to the toilet. And I was like, first of all, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You can walk to the toilet, boy. You got Grammy helping you to the toilet? Come on, you're a Packer man. Get it together. But then I had to realize, well, wait a minute, where was I? And he said, well, you were in L.A., right? We lived in Atlanta, and he said that I was on a business trip in L.A. I didn't even remember the business trip. Yeah. And this is about work-life balance. And it actually stuck with me. Because I realized, and we all have to struggle with this, I have been very successful and I've been out chasing my movie dreams. I've been out working very, very hard. But it pulls me away from home. right? And I have done a reasonable job trying to have a balance between what I do for my career and what I do for my family. I say all the time that if I didn't have a family or didn't care about family, I could be a much more successful producer. But I could also be a much better father and husband in my home life if I wasn't a movie producer. It's a balance. And that story my son was telling was a moment that he'll never forget when his dad wasn't there. And he wasn't blaming me, he wasn't faulting me, it was kind of matter of fact. But I realized I was in some business meeting in LA that was important to me at the time. I didn't even remember what it was.
Yeah.
And whoever I was meeting with, I don't care what actor, head of the studio, financier, whatever Hollywood meeting I was having, I could have pushed that meeting off. I could have told them, let's do it virtual or let me come out next week. And they would have said, okay, call my assistant, we'll figure it out. We'll change the schedule. Because that's what happens all the time. And so you have to realize that there is a balance. And that was something that was an eye-opener for me when I realized I didn't do it right in that moment, right? Yeah. That was a moment my son will never forget. Whoever I met with that I thought was so important, they don't remember meeting with me.
Yeah.
And so that's what I say. When you got those moments, you have those family moments, prioritize them.
Yeah.
I'll never get that moment back again.
So what would you do differently? Tell me how would you?
I would have stayed. I would have realized, like in that moment, right? I'm sure I thought, okay, I know I was there for the surgery. He had a recovery, I don't know, week, 2 weeks, whatever. I'm sure I flew my mom in town. All right, take care of him so I can go and do the work, right? What I would have done, though, is tried to make sure that he was more stable, that he was okay, that he was able to walk, that he was in a good mental place before I left him. Because it would have meant a lot to have his dad there with him during his recovery. Now, my son is fine. He went on to play college football, so I don't want to paint it like it was just some, life-threatening injury.
Yeah.
But it was still a big deal for him.
Yeah.
Prioritize the things that are big deals for your parent, for your family as a parent as often as you can. You can't be there for every moment, right? It's tough. You're out there because when we're in business, I'm competing against you. And if you home all the time and I'm out doing deals, I'm going to get more deals than you are, right?
Yeah.
That's part of it, but it's a work-life balance. So you got to try to do both. And reasonably, I've done a good job, but I haven't always done it right.
Yeah. Now, I find that in life, some of our the points that we learn, the lessons that we learn, it comes from a story. Okay. You talk about Leon Lett in your book.
I do, yeah.
Of how he was in a position to score that touchdown, but because he celebrated too soon, he dropped the ball, he fumbled.
Yes.
I want to know, is there a story in your life, a Leon Lett moment, if you will, where you had everything together, you was getting close, and you fumbled the ball?
I'll tell you my Leon Lett story. And for those that don't know, Leon Lett's Dallas Cowboy who, had a chance to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl because he recovered a fumble. He started dancing on his way to the end zone and got stripped of the ball. And so he lives in infamy because of that. Here's my story, actually. And it is, it's kind of apropos that we're talking about it today because it has to do with my movie, Think Like a Man. And Think Like a Man was based on Steve Harvey's book, of course, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man. And the first call I made about that book was to Rashawn McDonald. And they were the first people to take my call. And then after the book blew up and got famous, they remembered that I was the first filmmaker to call. So I always give props to Steve Harvey, Rashawn McDonald for remembering me as a young filmmaker. I wasn't Big Will Packer at that time. They gave me an opportunity to make that movie. So we make the movie. The movie is coming out, and we have an amazing opening Friday. And the way the movie business works is that based on your opening numbers for Friday, you can extrapolate out what it's going to make throughout the whole weekend, right? And so based on Friday, they say, oh, you had $10 million on Friday, you're going to make $30 million for the weekend, right? Well, we had an opening where on Friday where the movie studio's calculation said we were going to make like $20 million. And I remember I called Steve Harvey and I said, hey, we doing great, man. We're going to make $20 million for the weekend. He said, oh, that's great. He said, well, wait, is it over? Like, it's Friday. You called me Friday night. I said, well, they know based on, how the calculation works. I'm explaining to Steve. I'm like, Steve, let me tell you how the movie business works. Steve didn't know how the movie business worked per se, but he knew how work and hustle worked, right? He said, all right, cool. Well, if you happy with that, then that's on you. But I just know it's Friday. And if we keep going, right, this thing could get bigger, right? Yeah. And he kind of just left it like that and said, but you do you, because that's how he is, And if you know him and you know Rashawn, that's how they are. They just give you a little gem and let you do it on your own. Be like, I'm just going to tell you what I know. You decide on your own, right? And that's what he did. It stuck with me. And I realized that I might have been doing a Leon Lett. I might have been celebrating a little too soon because it wasn't over, right? And so I actually got off my ass and I called my cast, and we were one of the first movies. You read about now how celebrities and stars show up at a movie theater and surprise audiences and, you know, hand out stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
And we were one of the first movies to do that. Like, I started that early in my movie career. And I got Kevin Hart and Taraji and Regina Hall, Terrence J, some other actors to go. And even after Friday, after we had a big opening night, I said, we got to go again tomorrow. We got to go out Saturday. We got to tweet some more. We got to send more emails. We got to keep promoting because it's not over, because that was instilled in me from that conversation that I had with Steve. The movie ended up opening, I think it was supposed to open at 20 and end up opening at 30. So it ended up making more than they thought it was going to make. And that just showed me, Lett, don't get too excited and celebrate too soon. It ain't over till it's over. Work hard until the very, very end.
Yeah, now that's powerful, man.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
2023, I was in D.C. Brother Harry Johnson
Yes.
invited me out
Yes.
to the ALC.
Yes.
That was actually the first time we met.
Okay.
Okay. I know you probably don't remember.
Okay. All right.
But you told a powerful story there about when you were making Stomp the Yard.
Yes.
And you bumped up against some resistance that was unexpected.
Yeah.
It was very challenging, specifically the source. I want you to kind of tell that story briefly and tell me any lessons that you learned from that.
You're putting it nicely when you say bumped up against some resistance. It was one of the most painful moments in my career, to be honest with you, brother.
Yeah.
I had made this movie, Stomp the Yard, and the whole point of the movie was it was a love letter from me to fraternities and sororities. And I made the movie, and while I was making it, again, I wasn't a big name filmmaker, right? I was just a young brother trying to make, this was actually my first studio release. My first movie was gonna be nationally distributed. I called all the fraternities and sororities. I especially called my Alpha brothers, right?
Yeah.
And nobody would call me back. And I said, you know what, they probably busy. It's fine. Let me focus on making the movie. And I did. I went out and made the movie, and the movie was good. Then when the movie started to get marketing, and you started to see trailers and commercials, now, all of a sudden, I started to get calls, right? And it was interesting because when I first called them, the only people that would call me back were the Qs. And I said, my own Alpha's not gonna call me back, and the Q's gonna call me back?
Yeah.
Q's called me back, but they didn't have much to say. They just said, yeah, okay, you're doing a little movie, well, we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Everybody blew me off. When they finally did call me back after the movie started to get promotion, I thought it was a good thing, and it wasn't. My own fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, was calling to tell me that they were going to boycott the movie and that they were filing a cease and desist. And this was my love letter to the Alphas and the entire Greek letter organizations, all of them, paying hell. And what they were saying was, you don't have the right to use our symbols, and you should have come to us first. Well, I tried to come to them, and nobody would call me back. And so that current administration of the Alphas threatened to boycott. And they went to Sony Pictures at that time and said, if you release this movie, we're going to sue you and we're going to boycott. That did two things. Number one, obviously it was a business lesson for me, right? Because we actually did not need, it's called fair use. And so because we weren't depicting them negatively, we had the right to show their symbols. However, because Sony as a big corporation got nervous, and that's how business works, right? Big corporations, they don't want controversy. They asked me, was I willing to remove the symbols from the movie? They said, you don't have to. And I said, I am. I'm willing to remove the symbols. But I also said, I did not want to give money, because at the end of the day, it was a money conversation. I didn't want to give it to the fraternities and sororities. But I said, I do want to make a donation, and we can give it to what was in progress at the time, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And so when you and I met in D.C., they told that story publicly for the first time, because I had never told it. I told it publicly because what happened was Stomp the Yard came out, and it was a big hit, because if you want to get attention to something, boycott it, right? The worst thing you can do is say, hey, everybody, whatever you do, don't look over here, because everybody gonna go, what are you talking about? What's that over there, right? Yeah. And that's what happened. The boycott actually got us way more publicity. So the movie opened big, number one, and we made a sizable donation to the MLK Memorial Foundation. And then the Alphas brought me to the national convention the following summer, and they gave me lifetime membership and apologized for what had happened. So it was a great full circle moment. But in the moment, it was painful.
Yeah.
But it all ended well.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Now, as a producer, you got to be a master of managing people.
For sure.
egos,
Oh, yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
If there was one tip, a secret that you had to being a success at that, what would it be?
Getting other people to buy into your dreams and your goals, right? Finding commonality in the value that you're assigning to your goal. So if I'm trying to get something and you don't see any value in it for you, you're not going to help me to get there. But if I can get you to say, Jerome, this is why it's beneficial for both of us to try to get here. I'm trying to get here and it's going to benefit you because of this, right? Now you and I are both rowing in the same direction. So as a leader, you have to get other people to buy into the same perceived value that you have in whatever the goal is. That's the key.
That's the key.
Yeah.
So now if you look in the definition of arrogance, it's defined as an overbearing pride or haughtiness. So you coined healthy arrogance.
Yes.
So that kind of seems oxymoronic. So I
Yeah.
want you to break down what that means and how you came up with
Feels
that.
a little antithetical, but I want to reclaim that word, right? Because that is what arrogance is, the way you described it. And arrogance walks into a room and says, I'm better than everybody in this room, you know, and I'm winning because you're losing. Healthy arrogance is about a supreme confidence that you have in yourself, okay? It's an inward feeling of confidence that says when you walk into any room, this room I belong in, number one. Nobody's more deserving to be in this room than me. Also, this room is better because I'm in it, and I'm going to make this room better because I have something to add to this room. So it's about a confidence that you then can make pervasive to other people. It's not about tearing other people down. It's about being a leader and bringing other people up, again, by getting them to see the value that you see in yourself and in your goals. Many of us, though, don't feel like we belong in rooms with important people, resourceful people, rich people. We feel like, what do I bring to this room? What is the unique thing that you have that nobody else in that room has? That's what you bring to that room. And that's what you should double and triple down on. And that's healthy arrogance, is realizing nobody is more deserving of realizing success. Nobody on the planet other than you.
Yeah. So you said Girls Trip was loosely related to how you met your wife.
Yeah.
So talk about that. How did you meet your wife, Heather?
Yep.
What parts of the movie were accurate and which ones weren't?
Heather would tell you that none of that was her. She would be like, Will made all that up, and we wasn't doing none of that crazy stuff on Bourbon Street. But I did meet my wife at the Essence Festival, and that is where we started our relationship. And then I came back, I think it was 5 years later, and proposed to her on the main stage at the Essence Music Festival.
Wow.
Yep, 100%. Nephew Tommy, who you know from the Steve Harvey Morning Show, he brought me up on stage. It was right after Jill Scott had gotten off and right before Maxwell came on. Got up there in front of 60,000 people and proposed to her. Had to make sure she said yes. I wasn't giving her no chances to say no. But it was this opportunity when I made the movie to showcase an event that people outside of that world, even outside of black women, may not have known about. Black women know about the Essence Festival. They've been going for years. This is a big event. And so being able to do a movie that showcased it was an excellent opportunity for me. And I wanted to show black women being real, right? I didn't want to show them just doing, just going to church, just behaving right, just behaving bad. I just wanted to show them as human, fighting, fussing, acting up, acting crazy, doing what black women actually do. I just wanted to show the humanity of sisters. That's why that movie was a success.
Yeah. So, last question.
Okay.
If there were one do-over in life, whether personally or professionally, what would you do over?
Not one thing.
Not one thing.
Man, and I've made mistakes. It's not that I've done everything right, but I've learned from everything. I sit where I sit today because of everything I've done right and I've done wrong, right? There was not one thing that I would change. I absolutely have regrets. I need those regrets. Regrets make it so that you feel the pain of a decision so you won't make it again.
Yeah.
You have to have regrets. So as much as I may want to, I wouldn't do it. If you gave me a magic button I could push, I wouldn't change a thing because I need to be where I am today, as imperfect as I am with all the decisions that I've made. I live with them and I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there you have it.
There you
go. Tell everybody where they can get the book, anything
Yes.
that's coming up. I think your camera's right over there. Just
Yeah.
talk to the people. Tell them where they can get the book and what's next for Will Packer.
Awesome. Listen, Will Packer, I'm here on Black Money Tree. You already know I'm your favorite actor's favorite movie producer. You've been supporting me for a while, and I appreciate that. My first book is out now. It's called Who Better Than You? The Art of Healthy Arrogance and Dreaming Big. I encourage you to go out and get it wherever books are sold, but I'm also encouraging people specifically, go out and support a black bookseller. Black booksellers have got online links all over the place. In Atlanta, the one that has been really supportive of me is 44th and 3rd. So I like to support them, but they aren't the only one. There's an amazing one called Lett Bar in Brooklyn. Find your local black bookstore, right? Go out and support them because they support us. And as a community, when we support each other, that's where we make all the difference. I got a bunch of projects out there, but I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about you supporting this podcast because this is where you go and you learn about money and how you can empower yourself and get smart. Learn, listen. Some good stuff happening here, and I hope my conversation was part of it. There you go.
Thank you so much, Will
My
Packer.
man.
And thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Black Money Tree Podcast.